ID that explains exactly why I'm here.
I don't care what you say you are. Turn around.
I'm compliant, but you're about to make a serious mistake.
Hands behind your back.
Get out of the vehicle. Keep your hands where I can see them. The voice came sharp and flat, cutting through the low morning hum of traffic near the base perimeter. The man behind the wheel did not flinch. He rolled down the window the rest of the way, slow, deliberate, his palms resting on the steering wheel. Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped? The patrol lights reflected off the faded paint of the SUV. Red and blue strobes bounced against the concrete barrier that marked the outer security zone of the military installation. A dry desert wind carried the smell of hot asphalt and jet fuel. Somewhere beyond the fence, a helicopter lifted off its blades, chopping the air in steady mechanical rhythm. License and registration, now. The man reached carefully toward the glove compartment. He moved like someone trained to control every motion, aware that even an innocent gesture could be misread. He was dressed plainly, khaki pants, a dark jacket, no visible insignia. Just another black man driving near a restricted area, at least to the officer standing beside the door, hand resting just inches from his holster. You were driving slow near the base entrance, the officer said. That's suspicious behavior. Suspicious how the man asked, his tone calm, measured. I'm on my way to a scheduled meeting. The officer leaned closer, scanning the interior of the vehicle, eyes narrowing. Don't get smart with me. People don't just cruise around military property unless they're up to something. Step out of the car. A pause settled between them. The helicopter noise faded into the distance. A second patrol unit pulled in behind, tires crunching over gravel. Two soldiers at the nearby checkpoint glanced over, then looked away, trained to ignore civilian police matters unless ordered otherwise. Officer, I'm complying, the man said evenly. But I need you to understand that I have identification that explains exactly why I'm here. The officer scoffed. Yeah, I've heard that before. Step out. Hands on the roof. As the man opened the door, the desert sun hit his face, revealing lines etched by years of responsibility rather than fear. He placed his hands on the vehicle, fingers spread. The metal was already warm. You trying to tell me you belong here? The officer asked. Because from where I'm standing, you don't look like base personnel. That sentence hung in the air longer than the rest. The man closed his eyes for half a second, not in anger, but in recognition. He had heard versions of it his entire life. Different uniforms, same assumption. Sir, I belong wherever my duty requires me to be, he said quietly. The officer took a step back, radio crackling on his shoulder. He did not hear the warning in that sentence. He heard defiance. And in front of another unit near a military base, defiance felt like a challenge to his authority. All right, he said. Let's find out who you really are. At that moment, phones began to appear from passing vehicles slowed by the scene. A soldier at the gate frowned, watching more closely now. What started as a routine stop had already crossed an invisible line, and neither man had any idea yet how expensive that line was about to become. To understand why the stop unfolded the way it did, you have to step away from the flashing lights and the concrete barrier and look backward. Long before that SUV rolled near the base, long before a hand rested on a holster, two very different paths were already moving toward collision. The man at the center of the stop was Major General Elijah Brooks, 56 years old, 34 years in uniform. Born in a low-income neighborhood outside Baton Rouge, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts as a hospital custodian. His first memory of authority was not respect, but caution. Sirens at night. Squad cars idling too long on his street. Conversations that stopped when police walked by. Elijah learned early that discipline was survival. He joined ROTC in high school because it offered structure and a scholarship path. At 18, he left Louisiana for a military academy, where he was one of only 3 black cadets in his class. He ran harder, studied longer, spoke less. Mistakes were not treated as learning moments. They were confirmations of bias. He commissioned into the National Guard just before his 22nd birthday. Over the next 3 decades, he deployed repeatedly. Flood response in the Midwest. Wildfires out west. Overseas rotations where logistics failures meant people died. He learned to lead quietly. He learned that shouting rarely solved anything, but preparation did. By 40, he was commanding thousands of troops. By 50, he was responsible for coordinating joint operations between civilian law enforcement federal agencies and military units during emergencies. He had testified before state legislatures. He had briefed governors. He carried the weight of decisions that affected entire communities. Yet outside the wire, none of that protected him. Titles stayed on paper. Medals stayed in drawers. When he drove alone, dressed plainly, He was just another black man navigating spaces that had never been designed for his comfort. The meeting he was heading to that morning was routine, a security coordination session with base leadership. No escort required, no uniform needed. He had done it dozens of times before. He had learned long ago that blending in was often safer than standing out. The officer who stopped him came from a very different world. Officer Daniel Kessler, 38 years old, 11 years on the force, born and raised 2 towns over from the base. His father had been a corrections officer, his uncle a deputy sheriff. Law enforcement was the family trade. Authority was inherited, not questioned. Kessler joined the police department straight out of the academy. Early evaluations described him as proactive, assertive, confident. Words supervisors liked, words that often masked other patterns. He volunteered for high-visibility assignments, traffic enforcement near government facilities, patrols around industrial zones, places where discretion mattered. Complaints followed him quietly. Nothing dramatic enough to end a career. A motorist detained too long. A stop escalated unnecessarily. A tone described as hostile. Each time, internal reviews found no policy violations, no sustained findings, just reminders to be mindful. Kessler believed he was good at reading people. He trusted his instincts more than procedure. He saw himself as the line between order and chaos. Near the base, that belief hardened into something else. Everyone there was either authorized or suspicious. There was no middle ground. He had stopped dozens of vehicles in that same stretch of road. Contractors, vendors, delivery drivers. Most were waved through after brief checks. Some were warned. A few were searched. Patterns existed even if Kessler never named them. Certain drivers got more questions. Certain tones triggered quicker escalation. To Kessler, authority meant control of space, control of narrative. Being challenged even politely felt like erosion. An erosion in his mind led to danger. When he saw Elijah Brooks driving slowly near the perimeter, he did not see a senior military leader balancing civilian and defense responsibilities. He saw an anomaly, a question mark, a potential breach. And once that conclusion formed, everything else filtered through it. Credentials could be fake. Explanations could be rehearsed. Calmness could be arrogance. He had been trained to think that way, and reinforced by years of stops that never came back to haunt him, until now. Neither man knew the other's full story in that moment. But both were carrying decades of experience that shaped every word, every pause, every movement. One had learned restraint because mistakes cost lives. The other had learned dominance because mistakes were forgiven. That imbalance was already baked into the encounter before the first command was spoken, and it was about to turn a simple traffic stop into something far bigger than either of them intended. The road beside the base narrowed where the patrol cars sat angled across the shoulder. Morning traffic slowed to a crawl. Drivers craned their necks as they passed, trying to understand why a man stood with his hands on the roof of his own vehicle, while 2 officers watched him like a threat. Officer Kessler took the documents from Elijah's hand and barely glanced at them before handing them back. "That doesn't tell me why you're here," he said. "It does," Elijah replied. "It explains exactly why I'm authorized to be in this area." Kessler shook his head. "Anyone can print something that looks official. You people think flashing papers makes you untouchable." Elijah's jaw tightened just slightly. He kept his eyes forward. "Sir, you can verify my credentials through the state system or by contacting the base command. I'm listed." The second officer shifted uncomfortably. He had been silent since arriving, watching the exchange, sensing that something was off. He glanced toward the checkpoint where 2 uniformed soldiers now stood openly watching. One of them whispered something into a handheld radio. Kessler noticed the movement. His posture stiffened. He felt eyes on him now. Witnesses. That changed the math. Backing down in private was one thing. Backing down in public felt like surrender. "Turn around," Kessler said. "I'm going to pat you down for weapons." "On what grounds?" Elijah asked calmly. "I've done nothing unlawful." "Your attitude is grounds enough," Kessler snapped. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." A car stopped completely in the adjacent lane. A woman inside held her phone up, recording openly through the windshield. Another driver did the same. The sound of a camera shutter clicked somewhere behind them. "Sir," Elijah said, raising his voice just enough to be heard by those nearby, "I am complying, but I am stating clearly that this search is unnecessary and improper." That word improper hit Kessler like a slap. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't tell me what's proper. You don't tell me how to do my job. The second officer cleared his throat. Dan, maybe we should just run him through the system first. Kessler shot him a look. Stay out of it. At the checkpoint, one of the soldiers started walking toward them, then stopped when his partner grabbed his arm. Military protocol. Observe unless instructed. Elijah felt the shift. He could feel the crowd growing. He could feel the tension tightening like a wire pulled too far. He knew this moment. He had de-escalated riots. He had calmed armed men in disaster zones. And yet here, unarmed compliant, he had less control than ever. Sir, Elijah said again, slower now. My name is Elijah Brooks. You can confirm my rank, my assignment, and my clearance with one phone call. Kessler did not respond. He keyed his radio instead. Dispatch, I need a supervisor. Possible impersonation near the base. The word impersonation rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, That man looks calm as hell. Another voice followed. Why won't they just check? Kessler heard it all. Each whisper felt like judgment. Each raised phone felt like accusation. He doubled down, stepping behind Elijah and gripping his wrist to reposition him. Don't touch me like that, Elijah said, his voice firm but controlled. I am not resisting. That's not your call, Kessler replied. The second officer looked away, his face tight. He knew the stop had gone too far. He knew it the moment credentials were dismissed without verification. But he also knew the culture. You didn't challenge a fellow officer in front of civilians unless you wanted to be the next problem. The crowd was fully formed now. Vehicles stopped. Soldiers watching. Phones recording from 3 angles. What had begun as a quiet roadside stop had become a public test of authority. And in that moment, with eyes everywhere and pride on the line, reason lost what little ground it had left. You think I don't know what this looks like? Kessler said, more to the crowd than to Elijah. I'm doing my job. Elijah said nothing. He stared straight ahead, knowing that every second was being documented, knowing that the truth did not need volume, only time. The situation had escalated beyond control, and the next decision would define everything that followed. The decision came without ceremony, no warning, no final attempt to verify anything. Officer Kessler stepped behind Elijah and pulled his arms back in one sharp motion. Turn around, hands behind your back. Elijah did not resist. He did not argue. He turned slowly, deliberately, the way he had trained soldiers to move under stress. The sun flashed off the metal as the cuffs came out. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow. Click. The sound was unmistakable. Cold steel closing around bone and skin. The pressure tightened, not enough to break skin, but enough to leave no doubt who held control. Elijah inhaled once through his nose. The smell of dust and exhaust filled his lungs. I am not resisting, he said quietly. Kessler said nothing. He adjusted the cuffs tighter than necessary, his jaw clenched. In that instant, it was no longer about security, it was about dominance. Phones rose higher. Someone gasped. A soldier near the gate muttered, "This is wrong." Elijah stared at the ground as he was turned toward the patrol car. Gravel crunched under his shoes. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of fear, but because of what it represented. Decades of service reduced to a silhouette in handcuffs on the side of the road. He was guided into the back seat. The door closed with a dull thud that echoed inside the narrow space. The interior smelled of old fabric sweat and disinfectant. The plastic seat was hard against his back. His wrists rested awkwardly behind him, already beginning to ache. Outside, Kessler stood for a moment, breathing faster than he realized. The second officer hovered near the door, eyes darting between the crowd and the base entrance. Dan, the second officer, said quietly, "You sure about this?" Kessler snapped the door shut. Too late to second-guess now. The patrol car pulled away slowly. As it passed the checkpoint, a uniformed base officer locked eyes with Elijah through the window. Recognition flickered there. Confusion. Concern. The patrol car did not stop. Inside the vehicle, silence stretched. The radio crackled with static, then went quiet. Kessler drove with both hands tight on the wheel. His thoughts churned, though he would never admit it. Something about this felt off. Too calm, too controlled. Elijah closed his eyes briefly. Not to escape, but to focus. His mind moved the way it always did under pressure. Assess, document, remember. Time, location, witnesses, words spoken. He thought of the soldiers under his command, of the briefings he had given about restraint, about professionalism, about representing the uniform, even when no one was watching. He wondered how many of them had been treated this way, without cameras, without witnesses, without a chance for accountability. Kessler glanced at the rearview mirror. Elijah met his gaze calmly. No anger, no pleading, just certainty. That look unsettled him more than shouting ever could. The drive to the station took 11 minutes. Each minute pressed heavier than the last. By the time the patrol car rolled into the lot, Kessler's confidence had begun to fray. He pushed it down. He told himself procedure would protect him. It always had before. Elijah stepped out of the car when instructed. The cuffs were still tight. His shoulders were stiff now. A small crowd of officers glanced over as they walked inside. No one asked questions yet. The injustice had already occurred. Everything that followed would simply expose it. The holding area inside the station was quieter than the road outside. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Paperwork shuffled. Phones rang and stopped. Elijah sat upright on a bench, hands still cuffed behind him, posture straight by habit rather than comfort. An officer at the desk glanced at the intake form, then looked up. He looked again. His eyes lingered longer this time. "What's the charge?" the desk officer asked. "Suspicious activity near the base," Kessler replied. "Possible impersonation." The desk officer nodded slowly, then turned back to the screen. He typed, paused, typed again. His brow furrowed. "Hold on," he said. "What was the name again?" "Elijah Brooks," Elijah said evenly. The clicking of keys stopped. The room seemed to narrow. The desk officer leaned closer to the monitor, then reached for the phone. "Sergeant Miller, can you come up front? I need a second set of eyes." Kessler shifted his weight. This was the moment he told himself not to overthink. Systems took time. Verification took time. That was normal. Sergeant Miller arrived within a minute. 20 years on the job. The kind of presence that didn't need volume. He glanced at Elijah, then at the screen. "Run that again," he said. Full query. The desk officer did. The result came back instantly this time. Miller's expression changed. "Not dramatically, just enough." "Where did you pick him up?" Miller asked. "Near the base perimeter," Kessler answered. Miller looked at Elijah again. Then at Kessler, then back at the screen. "Uncuff him." Kessler blinked. "Sir." Now Miller said. The sound of the cuffs unlocking was softer than when they closed, but it carried more weight. Elijah rolled his shoulders once as circulation returned. He said nothing. Miller stepped aside and lowered his voice. "Do you know who this is?" Kessler frowned. "I told you. Possible impersonation." Miller turned the monitor so Kessler could see it. Rank insignia. Clearance indicators. A photograph in uniform. Major General Elijah Brooks, National Guard, Joint Operations Command. The words did not register all at once. They landed in pieces. Major, General, National Guard. Kessler felt the room tilt slightly. His mouth opened, then closed. "That's not possible," he said. Miller stared at him. "It is. And it is verified." A door at the end of the hall opened. A man in civilian clothes entered, flanked by two base security officers. He scanned the room and stopped when he saw Elijah. "Sir!" one of the base officers said, voice tight. "We've been trying to reach you." Elijah stood. His height, his bearing filled the space differently now that the truth was out in the open. "It's all right," Elijah said quietly. "I'm here." Miller swallowed. "General Brooks, on behalf of this department, I need to apologize immediately." Kessler felt heat rush to his face. His ears rang. He replayed every word he had said on the roadside. "You don't look like base personnel. Anyone can print something official." He saw the phones, the soldiers, the crowd. Sir Kessler said, his voice smaller now. "I didn't know." Elijah looked at him. Not with anger, not with triumph, with something heavier. "That was the problem," Elijah said. The room was silent. Even the radio chatter seemed to pause. Miller straightened. "This incident is going to be documented fully. IA will be notified immediately. General, you are free to go." Elijah nodded once. But he did not move right away. "Everyone in this room," he said calmly, "understands that this didn't happen because of confusion. It happened because of assumption, and assumptions have consequences." He turned and walked toward the exit base officers falling into step beside him. Behind him, Kessler stood frozen, staring at the screen that now displayed the truth he had refused to verify when it mattered. The revelation had come, and it had come too late to undo what was already recorded. The video surfaced before noon. Shot from 3 different phones stitched together by strangers who did not know each other, united only by the instinct to record what felt wrong. By mid-afternoon, it was everywhere. A black man handcuffed near a military base. Calm voice, clear credentials ignored. A patrol car pulling away while soldiers watched in silence. By evening, the name was attached. Major General Elijah Brooks, National Guard. The reaction was immediate and unforgiving. Veterans groups shared the footage with disbelief. Civil rights attorneys dissected every second. Retired officers went on record saying what many active ones could not. This should never have happened. The department issued a brief statement that night. An incident occurred. An internal review is underway. We take matters like this seriously. The words landed flat. The comments did not. Within 24 hours, the State Attorney General announced a formal investigation. Internal Affairs opened a parallel inquiry. Body camera footage was pulled. Radio logs were preserved. Dispatch audio was flagged. The supervisor call was replayed frame by frame. Elijah did not give interviews. He did not need to. The evidence spoke without him raising his voice. On the third day, his legal team filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. Unlawful detention, false arrest, violation of constitutional protections, racial profiling, failure to follow verification protocol near a military installation. The complaint cited timestamps from the video names from the radio logs and department policies ignored in real time. Public pressure mounted. The governor's office requested a briefing. The National Guard released a statement confirming Brooks' status and calling the incident unacceptable. Members of Congress weighed in. Inside the department, the tone shifted. Officer Kessler was placed on administrative leave, then stripped of patrol duties, then relieved of his badge and weapon, pending the outcome. His record was reviewed in full for the first time in years. Patterns emerged that had once been dismissed as coincidence. Stops near restricted areas, escalations without cause, complaints resolved quietly. The internal report took 6 weeks. Its findings were blunt. No reasonable suspicion. Failure to verify credentials. Escalation inconsistent with training. The phrase implicit bias appeared for the first time in an official document tied to Kessler's name. He was terminated before the lawsuit reached discovery. The union declined to fight it. The video was too clear, the subject too credible, the damage too public. The city moved quickly after that. Settlement negotiations began behind closed doors. The number was never officially announced, but sources described it as substantial. Enough to sting, enough to force policy change. More important than the money were the reforms. Mandatory verification protocols near military facilities. Bias training tied to disciplinary authority. An early warning system for officers with repeated escalation complaints. Elijah Brooks returned to duty without comment. He stood at a podium weeks later not to discuss the case, but to address a room full of junior officers and guard members. Authority, he said, is not proven by force. It is proven by restraint. The words were clipped into short videos and shared again. Not in anger this time, but as instruction. Officer Kessler's career ended quietly. No press conference, no redemption arc. Just a name removed from the roster and a lesson written into policy. Justice did not arrive loudly. It arrived through documentation pressure and consequence. And for once, the system did not look away. What happened on that stretch of road near the base was not a misunderstanding. It was a textbook violation of constitutional law. The Fourth Amendment is clear. A police officer may not detain, search, or arrest a person without reasonable, articulable suspicion of criminal activity. Driving slowly near a military installation is not a crime. Being calm is not a crime. Asking why you are being stopped is not a crime. In this case, the officer bypassed the most basic safeguard available to him: verification. Near military facilities, coordination protocols exist for a reason. Civilian law enforcement is trained to confirm credentials through dispatch, through base command, or through shared databases. That step takes minutes. It was skipped entirely. Why? Because bias fills gaps where patience should exist. When an assumption is made early, every fact that follows is interpreted to support it. Credentials become suspicious. Calmness becomes arrogance. Compliance becomes defiance. This is not accidental. This is how cognitive bias operates under stress. Psychologists call it confirmation bias. Law enforcement culture often reinforces it by rewarding control over correction. Backing down feels like weakness. Admitting error feels dangerous. In public, it feels impossible. But the law does not care about pride. It cares about process. And process failed here. For viewers watching this story, there are practical lessons that matter. If you are stopped, stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Speak clearly. Ask for the legal basis of the stop without raising your voice. If you have credentials, present them once and ask for verification rather than arguing. If possible, ensure the encounter is recorded either by you or bystanders. Documentation is protection. Is If you are a witness, record from a safe distance. Say the time, location, and what you are observing. Do not interfere physically, but do not look away. Accountability often begins with someone choosing to document rather than dismiss. And for officers, this case offers a hard truth. Authority without humility becomes liability. Verification is not weakness. De-escalation is not surrender. Bias unexamined does not stay private. It surfaces in moments like this with careers, budgets, and public trust on the line. The final lesson is simple and uncomfortable. Status did not protect Elijah Brooks. Rank did not prevent his arrest. What changed the outcome was evidence, visibility, and a system that was forced to respond because the truth was undeniable. Now ask yourself a harder question. How many people experience the same treatment without cameras, without titles, without legal teams ready to act? If this story made you uncomfortable, it should have. Discomfort is where learning starts. Comment below. What would you have done if you were there, watching, stopped, or holding the badge?